Well, hello again. My name is Mark Jennings Bates, and I'm here to talk to you with KelownaHomes.tv. I want to talk to you this week about BC assessment, more importantly, your home assessment, and the fact that I believe it's one of the most misunderstood concepts in real estate by consumers and probably a few realtors as well. And so let's try and clarify what a BC assessment does, and this time of year is pretty important for them. I'll explain that, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding of what the assessed value of your home may in fact mean. I remember early on in my real estate career a lady calling me and asking if I could help her because she wanted to appeal her BC assessment value because it was too low and it would impact the sales value of her home. That's one of the areas where we completely misunderstand what BC assessment is actually attempting to do. This is August now as I make this recording for you, and what's just happened is BC assessment has just gone through their files and they have allocated new assessed values on your home. What you need to understand is that the value that they assign to your home is supposed to be a fair market value as of July the previous year. That means that now in August they've just finished doing the rounds and taking a look at their various different files to see what your value is that you will get a notice of later in the year. So what's the value for? That's the most important thing. As I mentioned to you, some people believe it's the appraised value of their home, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's simply an allocated value so that municipalities can send you a tax bill. So what the municipality attempts to do is to use the assessed value of all of the real estate in their region to divide amongst that real estate the amount of taxes that they need to collect. Fairly simple program. The challenge that BC assessment has is one of manpower. They can't possibly every year look at every single house on every single street in every single municipality. So they just kind of assign a growth rate or a reduction rate to the homes, and they might take a whole street and just say, well, it'll go down by this much. The problem is they probably haven't looked at some of those homes for many years, and so there are discrepancies that get worse as time goes on. Take, for example, the street where I live. In 2002, when I moved here, I felt that the assessed value was too high. So I went to BC assessment and in fact I called them and said, my assessment is too high, I believe, just a little bit. And they said, well, is it close? And I said, yes, it's close, but compared to my neighbors, it's a lot higher. There's no comparison between my neighbors' assessed values and mine. And they said, well, you can't complain about your neighbors' assessments. The fact still remains, though, that my neighbors still have under-assessed values. If you take, for example, there's a neighbor across the street who recently sold their home for over $750,000, and yet their assessed value is around $500,000. Big discrepancy from what BC assessment believes is the market value and what somebody who wrote the check for the home believes is market value, and that's a very important point here. My home, contrary to that, has been on the market for 2 years now at below assessed value and it's not sold. And so you can see that the challenge comes with having not necessarily an over-assessed home, that is the scenario with me, but having a home that has a discrepancy compared to your neighbors means that you're carrying the tax burden on the street. That is extremely and completely unfair, and it's a situation that BC assessment refuses to address. The best answer that I got from BC assessment is we'll get round to it eventually, and we'll make sure that there's some equity in those assessments. Well, I had that conversation with them 10 years ago, and that inequity still exists. That is just one of many situations. If I were to pull the tax assessments on properties and show them that they are way out of line with what the market value is. The reason is simply that it's a process that's used for municipalities to identify what mill rate they're going to assign per $1,000 of housing value in the municipality. So in essence, I believe that BC assessment should change the way they do their assessments. Market value is not important from their point of view, and it complicates their lives and they can't possibly keep up. A better program in my mind is closer to what they've adopted in the UK, which is where they'll simply have 5 or 6 categories of real estate, and they'll assign an A, B, C, D or E category to your home, and that essentially gives you a premium if you're a higher category than another home. And Very, very simple, very straightforward. It doesn't have people wondering about whether their assessment is correct. They're appealing it because they don't think it's market value, and that's going to affect their sale value. And so, like averages, which we've talked about, market assessment, or the BC assessment of your house, is really nothing to do with market. At the end of the day, there's one thing that drives the market value, and that's what you're willing to sell it for at the same time as somebody is willing to buy it. If that transaction happens, that's market value, and unfortunately, BC assessment does not have the manpower to keep up with that fair market assessment. Anyway, hopefully that removes some of the confusion over why we have an assessment. It's purely for taxation purposes, although it's confusing because they claim it reflects fair market value. It's very difficult to do because of the number of transactions and the number of homes and the lack of manpower that BC assessment has. Look forward to talking to you again.